What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm also going to break down the whole theories out there about there being some kind of correction that's coming, how this may affect Tesla moving forward. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. Deposit $25,000 or more, and you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends very soon in just about 12 days. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So, one thing worth mentioning about Tesla is the fact that Tesla has seen quite a bit of a decline over the last couple of weeks, ever since they announced their deliveries. And then after the Robotaxi event, we continue to see this decline. So, the question is, what's going to happen for the near term future for Tesla? What is my personal opinion? I think that a lot of this hinges upon Tesla's earnings. But there's also going to be a seasonality factor that could affect the markets that could also affect Tesla. So, I want to talk about what those big factors are. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I made a prediction that wasn't really correct. I'm willing to admit that to everyone that I was wrong about that. As you guys know, I'm not really a fortune teller. I can't predict everything that's going to happen. And my prediction was that approaching the election, there might be some like downside that would be coming. But so far, there's no sign of it quite yet. Now, obviously, the election's not here yet. There's still some time for this to possibly play out. But I just want to say that the way in which I'm going to go about kind of like talking about this will change. So the theory is that when you look at what happens uh, during seasonality periods of election years, the market tends to sell off before the election and then tends to see a big rally afterwards, right? This is what tends to happen to the NASDAQ, the S&P 500. Look at this chart right here. October tends to be bearish. Then November and December tend to be more bullish. And then right here, October tends to be bearish. And then after the election, we tend to turn more bullish on the Dow Jones. That's what tends to happen. And this is what I was initially thinking. But I do want to give you guys an adjustment on this. So, what's been happening over the last couple of months is that inflationary data has been decent and the market's been running as a result of that. Earnings have not been too bad and the market's liking that. And then we had two more factors. We have the Fed. Jerome Powell keeps pumping the markets by saying the economy is doing well. He keeps kind of fueling that soft landing narrative that the market's liking. And the market is not pricing in a recession, which I still believe is going to be coming. On top of that, you have to look at this. When it comes to the overall positioning of options holders, the majority of people are still shorting the markets. The majority of these institutions have shorts, so do everyday people. People are continuing to short the market every week. If you look at the put to call option ratios, right? This coming Friday, or this last Friday, excuse me, we just had a 3.56 put to call ratio, 3 million puts, and under 800,000 of these calls, or under 900,000 calls, right? The majority positions are once again in puts. If you look at the next week that's coming up, we have a 4.49 put to call ratio. The large majority positions are in puts. Same thing with the week after. There's just nothing but puts. Every single week, we're just seeing puts, 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 puts. Every Friday, everyone's betting the market's going to crash, it's going to tank. That's part of why the market's holding up. So the market's still rallying, and I just want to make it very clear that if the market does tank with seasonality, Tesla's going to follow the trend. Tesla is known for following what the broader market does. So if the market gets a big rally, Tesla will try to follow that trend at least to some extent. And if the market gets a rug pull, typically Tesla also does that. That's what typically happens. Now, here's how things are going. So, for SPY, for those who like to trade SPY or even futures, there is a rising wedge and a triple bearish divergence that's continuing to develop, but there's no sign of us breaking down. It's very simple to determine if we're about to see a corrective phase. We need to lose our key EMAs. Notice that right here we were holding our green line, our 20 EMA as support. Right here we held our 50 EMA support as well. And then so for the last like week or so, we've been holding our 20 EMA again. So we need to lose 578 at the very least to this for this thing to start to turn bearish. As of right now, we're bullish and the market's remaining, very, very strong. So it's very dangerous to short too hard. I'd be very careful with shorting. So right now we're bullish, but there is going to be a corrective phase. I am very confident that's going to come eventually. I just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. Will it be right after the election? Will it be closer to next year? That depends. So the reason I say that is because one factor is the fact that we have a rising wedge on SPY. But then secondly, look at all these gaps that are still yet to get filled. This is something else you could consider. So if you look at SPY, we have these gaps over here. Um, the first one that's worth mentioning is right over here. There's this unfilled gap down here around the 563 area. There's another gap down here at 559. And then we have a third gap all the way down here. Wait, sorry, it's all the way down here It's a big unfilled gap at 534. So I do think we will eventually come down to the 530s. I don't know if it's going to be after the election, a little bit after that, or if it's going to be early next year because of the recession. One of those will eventually cause SPY to dip. Another reason why you could say that is because of the VIX. The VIX also has a lot of gaps to fill. If you look at the VIX like this, obviously the VIX is bearish right now, which is bullish for the markets. But when you zoom out like this, the VIX still has this gap to fill up here in the 36 area. So there's going to be a run to about the 40 area for the VIX coming soon. It's either going to happen early next year or maybe as soon as after the election ends or around that period. We'll have to see when the VIX gets a big, sharp increase. When you look at the NASDAQ, it also has a rising wedge like structure and it's continuing to develop it. So it remains bullish for now. It could attempt to push up to these highs, but once we lose our 50 EMA, notice how we were holding our 20 EMA right here. We held our 50 EMA. Once we lose the 490 area, there is a risk of us coming all the way down towards our 200 EMA at 480, and then the next support below that would take us all the way down close to like that basically the 465 area down here. But we're not worried too much about the low targets yet. We still remain bullish. So as of right now, the charts are trying to push, but there is potential for that corrective phase. So just to kind of clarify things, I want to see the QQQ, I want to see SPY and the others lose their key EMAs. I want to see them lose the 50 EMA. We have not done that yet, so the charts remain more bullish. So as of right now, the market's going to hold up. If the market gets a very big corrective phase in after the election, Tesla could see a big move to the downside as well. If it does not happen until early next year because of the recession that's coming up, that could also affect Tesla. So keep that in mind. Tesla does have some negative catalysts. Now, for the shorter term, however, Tesla is not as affected by SPY and the others. We have one more catalyst coming up that's going to be earnings. Tesla could start off with a boost before we get the corrective phase, or it may start off very weak. That depends on if we get a bounce or not with earnings. If Musk announces some very important product developments, he hypes up investors, and earnings goes really well, Tesla could run to the 240s. If earnings goes very, very poorly, we could be losing 200 and dipping down to the 190s. As of right now, we're doing a good job. I do want to call out that Tesla has a double top on the shorter term time frames, so that could lead to some downside. But there's still that inverse head and shoulders that also remains. So it could go either way at this point. But just know that even if Tesla does get a big run up, there still is a risk of downside because of the market potentially getting correction either after the election. But if it's not after the election because of manipulation, it could be early next year because of the recession, which I still believe is coming. So we'll just have to wait and see. But that's what my view basically is. I'm not worried about things right now until we see what happens. Tesla obviously has this big gap to fill above. And we do have another gap all the way down here in the 140s. So that's a little bit concerning. If Tesla ends up losing support at 180, I do see a risk of us coming down to that 140 area. So just keep that in mind. But it's a blessing in disguise because I would love to see that happen. I'm not saying that because I want to see your portfolio drop. I don't mean it like that. I would love to see another dip buying opportunity on Tesla because Tesla is going to be developing new technologies as they're working on the robo taxi and their vision. And I'm very bullish for the long term of the company. So once again, just to clarify things, earnings is going to be next week on Wednesday. Okay. That's going to determine if Tesla gets a bounce to fill the gap at 240 or if we get a big rug pull all the way down to the lower 200s. We'll be watching that very carefully. All right. And then once Tesla gets that development after earnings come out, just know that there could be a risk of downside again if the market gets that corrective phase in November, if not by early next year. And if that's the case, we're going to be watching to see if Tesla could hold this key support in the 185 area. If that fails us, we still have this gap down here, guys. So you want to be very careful. But this could be the final dip buying opportunity for Tesla before this thing starts an uptrend. You have to remember that things are in a very, very serious phase. So with the recession coming up, it's going to affect Tesla sales. That's why you want to be very, very patient with this. I don't trust the Fed who are telling us that everything's okay and the market's running as a result of that because we never ever get truly super soft landings when the Fed is entering, very, very high rate raising cycles. The Fed also told us the same thing back in 2001 and 2008. So that's my view, guys. We'll see what happens with Tesla's earnings. Will we start off with a big pump or not? Even if we get the pump, do not turn way too bullish because of some of the downside risks of the recession, the fact that Tesla sales are not the strongest, and because we're still in a high interest rate environment, we're not going to enter that lower interest rate environment for many years. So it's still going to have its effects on Tesla, especially the recession. Uh, the market getting the correction is going to most likely come, but I don't know the exact timing. I'm just going to be very patient on this. We have to wait and see if we lose our key EMAs on SPY, the QQQ, ES, and the others. We have a lot of gaps to fill, so the market will most likely see a corrective phase, but we don't know when. Is it going to be right after the election? Is it going to be closer to next year? We have to wait and see. There's no confirmation in the charts yet that we're turning bearish. All right, so that's a very simple analysis. I hope that's more helpful for people out there. We just have to wait. The charts remain bullish for now, so we'll give them the time it needs, and we'll see how Tesla's earnings goes for the next more immediate term catalyst. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. This is just my very, very quick 2 cents of the markets. I'll give you guys a more in-depth video tomorrow to break down what I see for the charts. Until then, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys again tomorrow in my next upload. Until then, thank you for listening, and peace out.